I counsel you to buy from me gold refined in the fire, that you may be rich, and white garments, that you may be clothed, the shame of your nakedness may not be revealed, and anoint your eyes with eye salve, that you may see.
And let there be a rich blessing in the reading of the word. And now we'll turn it over to Elder Zach and let the Holy Spirit speak through him.
Good morning and happy Sabbath. It feels kind of weird sometimes when you're saying good morning, happy Sabbath, when you've already said it to everybody that's sitting here already, huh? But I guess I'm saying it to people that are watching online. We appreciate you guys coming. We know that we have sometimes more people watch online than are in our little church. And we appreciate that. We thank you for being here with us. So the title of the message today is A Burning Witness. Yeah, after I kind of done it, I kind of thought about the two witnesses, but those aren't who I'm talking about today. I'm talking about us. You know, sometimes it could get hot being a Christian, can't it? Or following God in His direction. So gold tried in fire is fire hot? It is, right? Does it feel good to be burned? No. Not always, right? Not ever. But it's a necessity that God's trying to do in order to what? To get us to the white raiments that we're going to be wearing, right? He has to burn out the old man so that the new man can live, right? I have a question. Is sometimes, have you guys ever felt like God's not with you? Yes. Like you're going through the trials and the things, and you're praying, you're doing what you're supposed to be. You're like, Lord, I'm calling out to you. I'm praying to you, and I'm asking you to help me in these situations. And it's crickets. Do we still trust Him? Yes. That's what we have to look at everything that we're going through. We don't always know the reason why, right? But when we trust God, when we know that He's in control, when we could believe Him, we can know that we're going through those things for a reason, right? That He has a purpose for them. Some of them are terrible. You know, I think about the Alexander from Cuba. He was 22 years in a camp for being a Seventh-day Adventist, for having a camp meeting when he was told not to. 22 years. I mean, he was put in places where he had to stand on his toes, and one drop of water hitting him in his head, and with spikes under his feet for days. Put in cages where he couldn't walk, where they had to literally train him how to walk when he got out of that. For 22 years. And they didn't lose faith. You know what happened in those 22 years? More Christians were, I mean, they at one point split all the people that were keeping the Sabbath to other churches, to other prisons. Spread the gospel, right? That person, he had to go through those horrible trials. Oh, I'm going to be using this here in a second. He had to go through those horrible trials, but it richly increased God's people. Through his experience, many came to know the Sabbath and the true God, right? And there was people of all different Christian. They weren't all Seventh-day Adventists. They were coming together at a time of trouble, praying together, worshiping together, writing scripture, what they could remember on cigarette boxes. But that God was with them the whole time. I want to share, this is going to be a 27-minute video, but I watched it and God told me, show this to your church. Show this to your church, because this is a missionary. With AFM, American Frontier Missions. And he's going to share his testimony of an experience that he was having. Oh, I used to have to sign on already. Well, I have it set in my, okay, hold on. Oh, sign in with my phone, okay. Huh? You know how to do that? Well, I no. Yeah, mine's ad free. So, oh, there we go. For some reason, I had all my stuff set up on this thing, and for some reason, it took it all off. There we go.
Especially the ads.
Oh man, they're terrible. So I pay the extra money to have. Wait. Huh? Oh yeah, there we go. Oh. Well, let's see. I'll get it. Let's see. Where's my subscription? Huh? Did I download? There it is. There it is. All right. So can God be trusted? This is.
So like, why am I swimming in this mud? Mosquitoes everywhere. I'm trying to do God's work. I ask Him for help. He's not helping me. What am I doing it for? Well, it's because I'm a missionary. What do missionaries do? We tell people things like, give your life to Jesus. If you give your life to Jesus, you'll always be there. I tell people, give your life to Jesus, and you'll never be the same again. Life will be so much better. And my own life doesn't prove that. I'm actually lying. Yeah, so my wife and I were asked to go work in Papua New Guinea. And, it's fascinating to think, what missionaries think when they first enter the field. We're all confident, cheerful, God's going to be with us. We're going to, do great things for God. And, in the back of our minds, we read places like in 2 Corinthians 11, where Paul talks about, being, spending a night and a half in the sea, being beaten, being stoned, all the just the stress, imprisonments, persecution. And we think to ourselves, oh yeah, Paul had that a long time ago. And, but that'll never happen to me, and if he does, I'll be faithful. What we don't often realize is that a lot of the stress that comes to missionaries isn't from outside persecution. And like my son would say, a lot of times it's in our heads, it's up here. We lived way out in the rainforest, and so we would have to travel for hours and hours and hours to get into town to purchase supplies. We did that 4 times a year. About every 3 months, we'd go to town, pick up supplies. And one particular time, because it does take at least a week to make that town trip, I decided I was going to take my son with me, my oldest son. So we got in the truck. We drove about 30 miles and arranged for transportation on a boat. Normally it would take about 9 to 12 hours in a boat. It would drop us off down a river, across the ocean, and drop us off on this beach. And once we got to the beach, we would arrange for like a public truck. We'd drive in the back of it with other passengers. They would take us on into to the capital city where we would get our supplies. We ended up spending 2 days on the beach, waiting for the vehicle to come. And there was a huge crowd there by then. We ended up sleeping on an island that night. And eventually we did get a vehicle to take us into town. But the 9 to 12 hours ended up being 30 hours. We had 11 tire changes in the process. And we finally did get to town. We were walking back and forth, from one store to another, carrying our stuff on buses to a place we were kind of collecting them. And eventually I hired a vehicle to take me back to back up the road, 9 to 12 hours. It had dried out a little bit, but then to take us to the wharf, we would pick up the boat again and arrange for the trip back home. On the trip home, we had problems with curfew. There was a riot squad and a drunk involved. The boat was overloaded. The weather was really bad. The waves were rough. And the skipper of the boat said, "Hey, look, we can't get into the mouth of the river. It's way too rough. Passengers are going to have to jump into the ocean, swim to shore." Finally got back up to where I could get my truck. I thought, man, only 30 more miles. I loaded up my 60 packages, 100-pound bags of flour, and I don't remember how many 20-pound bags of rice, because we fed a lot of orphans, and it filled it. It filled the whole back of the truck, filled the back seat as well. My son and I were the front seat with our backpacks, began heading home, and about 10 miles from the house, the wheel bearing froze up on the truck. And so we threw water on it to cool it off, got where it could move a little bit. We had to drive back to about 9 miles to a friend of mine's house, reload into his vehicle, try to make it back home again. And the next, I don't know how many hours, but we got stuck 5 times. By the time the night was over, we had loaded and unloaded all those packages in the back of the truck 5 times, and kept pushing the truck out of the mud. Eventually walked about 9 miles to get back to the house, in the dark. I think I got home around 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. My feet were full of stickers. And my son, same situation. We got to the house, covered with mud, rinsed off outside, and then went inside the house, and just dropped, just exhausted, just fell in bed, and crashed for a couple of hours. Got up early the next morning, made a call out to the village, and just asked some of my friends if they would be willing to help us go down and get the truck unstuck. And I'll shorten this up here just because it's, a lot took place, but a machete accidentally, left my hand and poked a hole in my leg. I had to go into the nearest hospital. It just seemed like for 2 months, all hell broke loose, just everything that could go wrong. It seemed like it did. A guy came and told me, "Hey, look, I got a message from the mission president. You're supposed to be coming to a workers meeting. You need to meet the mission plane on Sunday." And okay. So I got back in my truck, went all the way back home, fought through the mud, ended up at the house. I don't know what time. It was after sundown. We had worship at the church, walked for miles the next day, having worship in several different places, and made it back to the house. And, it just is kind of crazy, all the things that took place. But Sunday morning, I headed out and thought, man, we're going to load up the truck again, one more trip. And in the midst of all that, walking and everything, I came down with malaria. I fought malaria for days. And in the midst of the walking and carrying stuff. But I was just so tired, exhausted, weak. And then my legs started swelling up where I got poked there with the machete. It was turning red, all swelling up. Obviously, I had a bad infection. And we headed out that morning to go meet the mission truck. I told my wife, man, I'm tired. And we got stuff in there, headed out. And the grandma asked us, "Hey, man, do you mind if I ride with you? I want to take some watermelons and sell them in a little town there where you're going to meet the airplane." I said, "Yeah, sure." So she had a grandbaby. She threw in there and put her watermelons in the back of the truck. We headed off to town. And when we got to the bottom of this big hill, there was a big mud puddle there. And I knew that mud puddle, I had been stuck there before. And I said, "Lord, I'm not feeling good. I'm tired. I'm still weak from malaria. The mission president asked me to come, trying to be a faithful missionary. I've just been through just a lot of stress over the last few weeks, and I'm really desperate for your help. Can you please help me not to get stuck? You see my leg here, it's infected. I'm still recovering from malaria. Please help me not to get stuck. I'm just too tired to mess with this again. And with that in mind, that little prayer behind me, I put it in gear and headed it out across that big mud puddle, and it bottomed out. It just got stuck all the way down to the axles. And I felt profoundly disappointed. I got out of the truck, looked around, trying to figure out how I can get this truck up out of the mud, pry it up. I went to the back to get my shovel and realized there's no shovel. I forgot to put the shovel in the truck. It's okay, I'll get my axe. Well, I forgot to put the axe in the truck. Well, a machete, I forgot to put any tools at all in the truck. So I have nothing to work with. I'm miles and miles from home, stuck in the mud, and at the bottom of a big hill. And man, I just felt this profound sense of, just being alone, like God had just abandoned me. Grandma, she looked at me and it's like, oh, and she gave me a knife about that long, about 12 inches long, had a little handle on it. And I took that thing out and I began cutting trees down with it. And, cut this tree down about that big around, cut a V on one end of it, put it underneath the hub of the truck, and got out and tried to pry the truck out of the mud. Didn't have enough weight. Got my wife on there, got my kids on there, got grandma on there, got the grandbaby on there. Did all the way we could, trying to pry that thing out of the truck, and eventually you hear that tire coming out. And I said, okay, you guys stay right here. I'll go down there and put some stuff underneath the tire. I ran over there, but as I did, the truck, it went back down in the mud. So we had to, get everybody on the very end, and then pry some of the logs on there, trying to get enough weight there to lift that truck out of the mud. And did that one wheel at a time, shoving some sticks and stuff, old little pieces of log and stuff underneath the tires. And eventually got the truck back up in the air. I thought, okay, now we're gonna try it again. Had another word of prayer, asked God for help, put it in gear, began driving. And as the wheels began spinning, all the stuff we had put underneath the wheels slid out to the side. Now the wheel dropped down in between all that stuff. Now I've got, the frame of the truck sitting on logs and sticks and whatever, and it's high centered. All the wheels are just free spinning. And I realized I have to start all over again. And, several hours in, I just felt this really profound sense that God has truly turned his back on me. And I asked him for help. He didn't do it. I was sick. I was his missionary. I had an infected leg. The mission president had made the call. I was going at his bequest. It wasn't like I'm not on vacation. I'm doing his work. And I just felt like he ought to have some role to play in helping me to do what he asked me to do. So just wrestling with that, and why isn't God helping me? Like, why do I, appeal for help and I'm just here by myself? And in the middle of all of this, I really began questioning, how does this thing work between a Christian and God, prayer, angels? Like, what do angels do? Like, what's expected? Like, what is their role? How do we, kind of cooperate with them? And just how does that whole thing work? And the thought went to my mind, oh yeah, it's the ABCs of prayer. So you ask, you believe, claim a Bible promise, and somehow that kind of gets God's arm, twists it behind his back, and I can say, oh, you got to do it now because you promised. Look, see the promise in there? You got to do it. And so, okay, so I'll do the ABCs. I'll think of some kind of a Bible promise. What I needed was like some scripture that says, look, when the missionary truck is stuck in the mud, God's going to send his angels and push it out. Like, that would be really convenient. But I couldn't think of anything like that. The only verse I could think of was the one that says, but they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. I thought, no, I don't want strength. I just want him to push, I just want him to push. So then, I just trying to figure out, okay, now what do I do? And as I was wrestling with that, I was sore. I crawled underneath the truck, trying to get these, logs out that I put underneath there, getting other stuff in there. I was literally swimming in mud, mosquitoes all over my face. And I just felt like, why am I swimming in this mud? Mosquitoes everywhere. I'm trying to do God's work. I ask him for help. He's not helping me. Um, what am I doing it for? Well, it's because I'm a missionary. What do missionaries do? We tell people things like, give your life to Jesus. If you give your life to Jesus, he'll always be there for you. He'll be there for you. And, you're not walking alone. You and Jesus are walking together. And I thought that, what does it look like when I'm walking with Jesus, when he's here for me? Um, is that what it looks like that I ask him for help and he says no? Is that what it looks like when he tells me to do something and he just abandons me? Is that what it means? Oh yeah, give your life to Jesus. Life will be better if you do that. And I thought, I'm actually lying to people. If I tell people, give your life to Jesus, and you'll never be the same again. Like life will be so much better. And my own life doesn't prove that. I thought, I need to quit lying to people. And I probably shouldn't be a missionary anymore. I need to go home. And so if I do, what my life be like? Well, I'll probably not go to church anymore. I'm not going to have anything to do with the mission organization anymore. I'm just going to just stop it. And if I do that, I'll probably start watching TV all the time, just watching whatever. Probably start smoking, and then my marriage will probably fall apart, and then I just began seeing my basically happy life slowly begin to unwind. And so maybe there's more to Christianity than just having somebody help you when you need it. Maybe it's more like your life really is happier, and mine really was. I was a happy man. I had a happy marriage, a beautiful kid, and so maybe there's a reason for me being stuck here. Maybe I began thinking like Job, and so maybe it's a Job thing. Maybe I just need to be faithful, and somehow this is going to help God's work. So maybe there's a point to all this, and maybe there's going to be a judgment someday, and God's going to be going through the names of all the people. Maybe angels would come up to him and said, "Oh God, look, I know this guy. I see you. I took every report. Remember this sin and that sin." And God would be able to say, "Yeah, it's true." But he repented, he repented, and look, I've got evidence right here. He asked me for help. I didn't help him, and still he was faithful. And maybe God just needs evidence for the judgment. And so help me. Then I started getting some more perspective. It wasn't persecution. I wasn't being tortured. My body wasn't being pulled apart. I wasn't being hung upside down with my toes. And I thought, this isn't really like anything bad. It's just a stock truck. That's all it is. Just a stock truck. I just need to take a deep breath, relax, and just work on it. And just get it out of the truck, out of the mud. And if God needs evidence for judgment, I want to give it to him. It's a Job thing, and there's some reason for it in the future. That's fine. Begin to think about Jeremiah. Jeremiah suffered too, served faithfully his whole life, and didn't have any visible evidence at all of the reason why he's was doing it. Like nobody repented. Everybody went to Babylon. Like he didn't see any success for his ministry. So maybe it's okay because his success came years later, and long after he was gone, that's when Israel listened to his writings and repented. Maybe that's what it's all about. So anyway, I apologize to God, recommitted my life to him. And literally minutes later, the truck was out of the mud, up this muddy hill. I was sitting on the top of the hill thinking, what in the world just happened? How did that happen? It just seemed like 5 hours fighting in the mud and, struggling. And then as soon as I make this commitment, minutes later, the very next attempt, it just goes without any trouble through the mud, up the hill. I was just trying to figure out, what was that all about? It was like I jumped in the creek, washed off, went into town, I got to Caramon, and I went to the home of the pastor that was living there, and I was going to tell him, look, I'm sorry, I missed the mission plane, but just as I got there, the mission plane came in and picked me up and my family and the pastor. We went to Kikori. We had the mission meetings, and during the course of the meetings, my leg kept getting more and more swollen, more infected and painful, and it started turning blue. And there was a little clinic there, and I went and asked, man, I don't know what to do with my leg. And they looked and said, you got to get out of here. You have to get to a cooler climate, get some better food. Told me to go up to the Highlands. I talked to the mission pilot. He took me up there. En route, I met the principal of one of our schools up in the mountains, and he invited me to come stay with him after my leg was treated. Came back, stayed with him. When I popped on the campus, the student, like the president of the student body, asked if I'd give like the sermon on Sabbath. I agreed, and then they said, well, can you do like Friday night? Can you give like a little Vespers program for us? I said, yeah, I could probably do that. So I gave that Vespers, program, the Friday Night Fellowship, as they call it. And then they said, well, man, that was great. And I began telling the story of this last couple of months, just the hassles and one at a time. And then I said, man, could you do like Sabbath morning? Can you give a presentation then too? I said, well, yeah, I probably could. So I took that and began telling a few more lessons and more of the hassles that I had gone through. And man, and then I had the sermon, gave that. I could give like the Sabbath afternoon program too to all the, students here. So got to that point, and I kind of worked my way through the last couple of months and got to the stuff truck. Shared that story and just my own journey, wrestling with what does it mean to trust God when things don't come out the way you want them to, and God doesn't answer like you expect. And so finished the story, gave an appeal. They said, listen, I think all of us, life isn't easy, and God doesn't always answer our request the minute we ask it. It doesn't always, like sometimes we do suffer. It is a challenge to live a faithful life, and that we can't always find a Bible verse and say, God, you have to do what I'm telling you to do because look, you promised. And what's faith? Faith is doing what God asks us to do when things don't look good. If everything looks good, it doesn't require faith. If all the answers are right there, that doesn't require faith. Faith is what it means to follow Christ when you don't have the answers, when things don't look good, when you do suffer for it, when God doesn't save you, right? That's when faith is required. So on the way home, several groups of students met me. They kind of looked where I was going. They'd wait for me. And they just said, look, we just want you to know we decided to recommit our lives to the Lord. We really were touched by your presentation. And we also recognize that, life is a challenge. And we're currently, involved in a major trial of faith and of our Christianity. And we've decided to recommit our lives to God and just be faithful. And I was pretty excited. We had prayer together. I went on back to our lodging, and after being there for a little bit, I was still thinking about these groups of people I had met, and there was a knock at the back door. And so the principal went over, answered the door, and here were all these students, like this crowd of students out there. So they just wanted to talk to me, and I said, okay. They actually had taken up a cash collection for our ministry. They'd taken up clothes from and these are students that probably didn't have a lot of clothes. They didn't have a lot of cash, but they just did what they could to look. We just want to be a part of the work you're doing. We just love your presentation. We want to be a part of that work. So here's it's our way of thanking you and supporting your ministry. And then, they started crying, like a whole handful of them were crying. And they said, look, we've also, as a student body, we've listened to your message, we've heard it. And we wanted to tell you, as a student body, we want to embrace that challenge. We want to embrace the challenge and we want to be faithful to God as well. And when our time comes to have our stuck truck We want to hold on to God, even if He doesn't answer our questions, even if He doesn't provide those angels, just get behind the truck and just push it through. We're going to be faithful anyway. We're making that pledge to you now. And we had a beautiful prayer together, and yeah, just hugs and handshakes, and I remember crying, and so many other students were crying, and then they left. I went back inside, and I began asking myself, what would happen if if I had if I had given up? Because I came this close, and it still bothers me, just thinking how close I came, not just to giving up on that mission trip, but giving up on God, giving up on Christianity, and making a major shift in my life. I came so close to giving up. If I had known that this student body would respond like they did, and it all depended on me being faithful, oh man, I would have coasted right through it. It's like, oh yeah, students, I'll be telling this story later. Like, it'd be really easy just to go through all that. And but I didn't know, and that's the only reason that story has the impact that it does, is because I didn't have the answer, and and that it did require faith. And I really wrestled with that years on. If God has to prove to me, every time He asks me to do something, if He has to prove to me, look, here's the reason why, and explain it to me, and then get my approval first, then I'm God and He's not. He's a servant, like, because I have to approve of what He's doing before He does it. But that's not how it works. God's God, and I'm just a human. I don't live forever. So, this faith thing requires that me, this guy that's very, very human, very, I only lived for a few years and very frail. I don't have like His massive intelligence like God does. I don't know what the future. He does. To me, the stuck truck represents any time in my life when anything happens, could be anything happens that makes me feel like God's abandoned me. Could be an accident. Could just be intense loneliness or depression. Just anything, friends turning their back on us, divorce. Just any time we appeal to God for help and things don't turn out like we expect them to. And I just like to encourage those that maybe listening to this that have had those moments, are going to go through those moments, maybe be in the middle of that moment right now, where that feeling, that intense feeling of isolation, loneliness, abandonment. What I didn't realize was that people were depending on me to hold on. And if I had given up, all these other people that I encouraged, they wouldn't be encouraged, and and they would not have made that recommitment of their lives to God. And now it's easy to say, yeah, look, I'm glad I didn't let go, because all these other people were depending on me. And the truth is, even my wife and kids, like, their lives would be completely different if I had given up. And I just want to encourage you to realize that if you feel like get real close, you just like to just throw in the towel. And I just want to encourage you to remember, God is not as far away as you think He is, and He'll help you through it. He's going to help you deal with this loneliness, this sad, dark moment of your life. He'll help you through it. And when it's all over, you'll be able to look back on it and realize that this is the point when you got strength. And when it's all said and done, you're up above, and you look back and realize that things weren't as dark as you thought they were, that you weren't as alone as you thought you were. And you'll be grateful for God's goodness. I just want to encourage you not to, when you feel like you're that close, hold on and don't let go.
Have you ever felt stuck in the mud? I know I have. The same gentleman was missionary in an area, a very hard to reach area, and he had a church going with quite a good congregation, and then he had to go on leave for a short amount of time, not too long, of a leave. And when he came back, there was 0 in the church. The community had encouraged them out while he was gone. And then there was another time of stuck in the mud moment where he was like, all this time that he had spent, I mean, these people have been in it for years, but he didn't give up. He went back to the work he was doing. Went to the people, and he encouraged them. I know that many of us have family members, sometimes husbands and wives, that may not be walking as we want them to walk. We may feel stuck in the mud when it comes to missions towards them. But God's in control. He knows every aspect. I know we were having a week where just everything that could go wrong could go wrong. But I spent time praising the Lord. The Lord really had me. I was driving. I got long drives every day. And I went from a moment of feeling sorry for what was going on, and I heard, praise me. And I just started praising the Lord for, the whole drive, the whole hour. And I felt amazing after I felt the God's presence so strongly with me after that. And guess what? All the stuff the next day it was easy. He lifted me out of the mud. But it's not always like that right away. Sometimes it's enduring. We're told to endure to the end, right? I want to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We all see them for the faith that they had, right? In that trial of the image. Let's go to Daniel. And we're going to start at we're going to go Daniel 3, starting at verse 14. And this is that when they went to him, they said that there's 3 people that will not bow down when the music's playing. They will not. And so this is when Nebuchadnezzar is coming to them. So Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready at the time you hear the sounds of the horn," so he's giving them another opportunity, right? The flute, the harp, the lyre, I don't even know all these names, but with all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. But if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If that is the case, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor we do not worship the golden image which you have set up." Do you think it took time for them to get to that point? Do you think it took experience for them to get to that point of trusting God? Here in Prophets and Kings in 508, Spirit of Prophecy says, "From the history of their fathers, the Hebrews, they had learned that disobedience to God results in dishonor, disaster, and death. And that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of what? The fountain of all true prosperity. Their faith strengthened as they declared that God would be glorified by delivering them. And with triumphant assurance, born of implicit trust in God, they added, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up in Daniel." It makes you think about what he was contemplating, right? Like, if I go if I leave the ministry, if I walk away now from the ministry, he saw in his mind what he would start doing. What would he start doing? He'd start worshiping the other gods, right? Start watching TV, probably start smoking, probably start doing all the things, defiling the body, because he would have no faith in the Most High. These children, they saw what happened. They were carried off into Babylon. They saw the destruction of Jerusalem, right? On the other hand, I want to read the pride of Nebuchadnezzar. This is from Prophets and Kings 503 and 504. The dream of the great image opened before Nebuchadnezzar. Events reaching to the close of time. Where are we living right now? The close of time. Had been given that he might understand the part he was to act in the world's history and the relation that his kingdom should sustain to the kingdom of heaven. In the interpretation of the dream, he had been plainly instructed regarding the establishment of God's everlasting kingdom. For a time afterward, Nebuchadnezzar was influenced by the fear of God, but his heart was not yet cleansed from worldly ambition. This is what we have to cleanse ourselves from these things, from the want of to be lifted up in this world, right? And a desire for self-exaltation. The prosperity attending his reign filled with pride. In time, he ceased to honor God, and he resumed his idol worship with increased zeal and bigotry. Instead of reproducing the image as he had seen it, he would excel the original. His image His image should not determine in value from the head to the feet. So it was gold all the way down, right? His bride. But should be eternally of gold, symbolic throughout of all of Babylon as an eternal, indestructible, all-powerful kingdom, which should break into pieces all the other kingdoms and stand forever. He was putting himself in place of God. See, friends, we know that Sunday law is coming, that is an image to the beast. But it's so much more than that. It's whose image are we going to betray? Are we going to betray the image of the beast, man, the image of man? Are we going to betray the image of God and walk in his way, in his obedience? It's two choices that we have. And we're going to go through many stuck in the mud moments. It's Pastor Kevin always says, don't worry, it's going to get worse. And we know it is. A time of trouble such has never been. But when God is with us, who can be over? I honestly think it's going to be, I long for the no buy, no sell. I long for those temptations to not be there anymore. Right? In a way, it's going to be the best thing that ever happened to us. God is going to be there with us. He's going to give us everything we need, all the strength we need, and we're going to see an outpouring of the Holy Spirit like never before. But first, he's waiting for a people to rid themselves, to surrender so that he can rid themselves, right, of these things. Nothing we could do is in our own power. Nothing good, right? We are to behold everything that is good, everything that is lovely. Who is that? That's Jesus, right? There's no human being we can look at and say, this person is perfect right now. We could behold Jesus and he does the transforming. Continue to pray. I am working myself on that, the praying without ceasing. Continue to pray for everybody, no matter what we see, the changes we may not see. Like they talked about Jeremiah. Jeremiah didn't see a huge number of fruit, right? No. But it happened. It happened because God is faithful. If we walk in his way, he is going to be faithful always. Amen. Who would like to sing? Is our choir going to come up again?